Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Believe in Hawks episode. And today I actually have two special guests on with me. We're doing our first man band episode for Believe in Hawks. We have Garrick and Raphael Rattler on from the NewOrleans.network podcast. Appreciate you guys for coming on, man, and giving some insight from the Pelicans New Orleans side of things on a major trade that just happened between our two teams. But first, I want to ask you guys, how are you guys doing today?
It's all good, man. Everything's all good on this side. Thank you so much for having us on, man. You know, it might be a little sacrilegious to be on an Atlanta podcast down here in New Orleans, but man, it's always love to have people come in and kind of exchange this information on, especially this time with a big trade going on. So, man, appreciate you having us on, Raph.
Yeah, excited. Again, appreciate it, Bryce, for the opportunity. Looking forward to chopping it up, getting through this trade, because it was one of those that I immediately text my brother, called my brother, was like, did you see that? But yeah, excited to get into it, man, with you.
Yes, I'm excited y'all can make time to come on. Yeah, like I said, I just got out of the shower when the trade happened, and people are texting me. I got a call, I got a couple of texts, and they were just like somebody was like, whoa. I was just like, what? I was like, what? Like I'm just like, what's going on? Because I was about to go out, and then Dejounte, I'm like, Dejounte, what happened? So, yeah, man, big trade for both sides. I think the two teams have been connected for a few months now. There were discussions about, they talked at the deadline. Some people said that we may have wanted Herb at that time, and you guys wanted a Kongwu and just everything. And some people said this was like a middle ground, maybe a compromise. Obviously, if people forget what the trade was, Dejounte Murray went to the Pelicans. We received Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., I think it's EJ, Liddell, and then two first-round picks as well. Lakers next year pick, and then I believe it was a Pelicans pick in 2027. So obviously, it seems like both sides kind of got what they needed from this. So I wanted to ask you guys, what is your first impressions of knowing that now you guys have found the point guard y'all been searching for in Dejounte Murray?
Well, I'll go first, Rav. I think, when I first heard the trade, obviously this is something that had been going around. You have been hearing, Dejounte and even Trae Young kind of paired to the Pelicans. Trae came out with the list of teams that he would go to. So, and then obviously you heard about Dejounte being a trade target for the Pelicans during the season. So, the past season. So, you kind of figured that there was some kind of conversations having, especially with the Pelicans looking to kind of shake up things going into this offseason. And so when I first heard about it, I had kind of already been thinking about how Dejounte could fit in a Pelicans lineup and in the roster and things like that. And then, but a lot of the, I guess, the hoopla around the trade has been, is it going to include Brandon Ingram? Like I think everybody on the New Orleans side kind of knew that Herb Jones was a no-go. Like we kind of, this team and this city kind of holds Herb Jones high. There's actually a Herb Jones day in New Orleans. So really? you could kind of see how that was probably not a thing that was gonna happen. But was Brandon Ingram going to be involved in the trade? So when the trade came out and you read the details that Brandon Ingram wasn't included, you then turned to look, well, what did the Pelicans give up to get Dejounte? And we'll get into what you guys got. But, once you saw that trade come out, you could imagine Dejounte possibly in the rotation with Brandon Ingram, with CJ, with Zion, of course, the big pairing that you're looking forward to. I think it was a really good and prudent move for the Pelicans. Dejounte is on a great contract as far as when you think about the CBA and the numbers and where the Pelicans are, especially not paying the luxury tax ever in their franchise history. I think that there was a really good fit and a good guy to get. Obviously needing that lead guard. The Pelicans were terrible in the fourth quarters in close games. Last 3-4 minutes, they just didn't have any offense. And I think Dejounte is going to come in and fix some of that. So I think I was pretty excited to see, especially when you think about that they didn't give up Brandon Ingram in the trade. That's something that they can either pivot and use in a different trade or keep it together and just have a pretty awesome team. What about you, Raph?
Yeah. When I first saw the trade, again, I called my brother and I was like, man, is this really it? The details aren't out. The trade really hasn't been finalized. But on the surface, it just makes a whole lot of sense. Like if we look back at Willie Green, who's the head coach of the Pelicans and what he wants to play. He's coming from a coaching tree in Golden State and in Phoenix where they defended. They were top 5 in defense and they were top 5 in offense. And Willie Green, again, for his faults, if you're Pelicans fans watching this, they had their faults with Willie Green, but something that he prides himself on is defensive versatility, right? And so all throughout the year, you saw a Najee Marshall who just signed with Dallas. You saw a Jose Alvarado who, again, while he may be undersized, you never had to guess what he was giving you on the defensive end. And so from the Pelicans side, you're getting a guy who, he was asked to do more on the offensive end in Atlanta, and that's probably why his defense dropped to some degree. But here with Zion and CJ and BI, whoever is left going into the season, that's not going to be so much of his ask. It's not going to be, hey, we need 25 from you every night. It'll be, hey, we need you to be hellacious on the defensive end and also be able to score and do different things on our end. That was the other downside of the Pelicans last year. Outside of Brandon Ingram, outside of Zion, and at times outside of CJ McCollum, there wasn't a whole lot of guys who could get their own shot. There wasn't a whole lot of 3-level scorers. Like, it was a lot of catch and shoots and play off your stars. And in the playoff series versus OKC, you saw that fall to his detriment. Obviously not having Zion there, but having another player who can go off and score 40 on any given night. That can score you on 20 a given night, who can play off ball. I think that the Pelicans were looking across the country a little bit to Boston and saying, look at how Derek White and Drew Holiday complement their superstars so much. We need somebody like that who any given night, he's a liability, or he can make your liability pay for putting your worst defender on him. And so getting a Dejounte Murray, someone who, like my brother said, can help organize the team, who's been there in the moment at the end of games, who can really score and facilitate and get other people involved. It just made so much sense for this team and for this roster.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, because I think, you guys obviously need that other guy, like you mentioned, that can score the ball fourth quarter. That's the main thing I saw when the trade happened, is a lot of people were talking about the fourth quarter, and Dejounte was one of the most clutch players in the fourth quarter for Atlanta last year. So it's something that's, like you said, a natural fit there, helps improve that. And then again, don't know what's going to happen with Zion and health. Obviously, that's a question every year. Ingram as well, if he decides to stay on the team. And CJ seems to disappear in big moments. So it's important to have a guy that for the most part, Dejounte stays healthy and he's going to be out there and he's going to give it his all. So, and obviously for us on the Hawks end of things, the main gist is, if you look at the trade, just if you look at names, you're like, wow, Pelicans just fleeced the Hawks completely, which you saw. But if you actually break it down, one of the things in Atlanta that was a problem was point of attack defense. When you have Trae Young and Dejounte Murray at the point of attack, it's not good. It's not good at all. Like teams were able to score in Atlanta because there's no resistance from the perimeter. And so I think in this trade, the biggest piece to me was acquiring Dyson Daniels. And so that leads me into my next question. A lot of people say Dyson has all NBA defensive potential. Most of his highlights is defense. That's the type of player he is. Obviously, there are questions. Okay, how good can he become offensively? Maybe show some flashes here and there, but nothing consistent, right? So I just want you guys to let Hawks fans know, what are you getting in Dyson Daniels and why we should be excited, unless you didn't like him in New Orleans.
Yeah, I guess I can start with this and pass it to my brother. So Dyson Daniels is one of my favorite players on the team. Watching him play, he was the youngest player on the Pels last year, would have been the youngest player going into this year as well. He plays with a different level. We like to call him on our podcast, instant impact Dyson Daniels. There's times, even in the summer league, where the first play of the game is Dyson pick-sixing, getting a steal and going down and score. And so for the point of attack defender, again, if you ask different people that watch the Pelicans, you might get different answers, but you'd be surprised if you ask who's the best point of attack defender on the Pelicans. A lot of people would say Dyson before they said Herb. Herb is a better overall defender, but in terms of just locking, I remember the Celtics game where he was giving Jason Tatum the fix, right? And again, the Pelicans couldn't close at the end of the game. Go figure. But his on-ball defense is at elite level for a player who has such little experience. And so with Dyson, you are getting someone who is way ahead of the curve defensively. Most young players, defense is kind of the last. Defensive playmaker is kind of the last thing that you get. that was the first thing he started with. And he thinks the game in a way that's way more impactful. And this year, I think he was top 10 in steal rates, top 10 in deflection rates when he was getting minutes. Now, he wasn't getting minutes. That's the biggest thing, right, with this particular team. So Willie Green is not a real believer in young players fighting through their mishaps and learning on the fly. He wants you to learn in Birmingham. He wants you to learn in your little spells and things like that. So the opportunities for Dyson to really catch some momentum and grow offensively just weren't there. And so that's why, we talked about on our pod a couple of days ago. I think a landing spot in Atlanta is huge because, to your point, you need the on-ball defense. You need the point of attack defense, and he's going to force him to get minutes. And when this young corp with Ricochet and everybody like that you're putting around him, I think that's going to help support the fact that he's not there from the offensive end just yet. But in terms of who you're getting as a player, I think Dyson Daniels is going to be a good player in this league for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with what my brother said. I think, first of all, what you're getting in Dyson Daniels is you're getting somebody you can root for in the Olympics coming up. He'll be the point guard in Australia. Hopefully he gets some minutes this time. He didn't get any last year when he was in the Olympics, but I think he's taking another step on the floor, and he'll be able to contribute more as they come. But on the floor, I think my brother said it best. There were times in the game where he was dominating on the defensive side of the ball, playing in the passing lanes, just picking up people and giving them hell. And when CJ went down with an injury earlier this season, the Pelicans started he and Herb Jones kind of in like a point guard, in a guard wing kind of tandem situation. And they led the NBA in defense during that time. They were incredible. They won a lot of games that way, so much so that when CJ came back, there were a lot of fans like, do you shake up this this starting lineup just to kind of bring CJ back because they were playing so well. And Dyson's and Herb's defense was part of that. Now, the offensive side, there is a lot to work on, right? Like my brother talked up so much about his defensive side, and it is great. He is instantly the best point of attack wing defender on the Hawks, and it's not even close. He's that good. Offensively, he's got a lot to work on. One of the things that my brother and I have been begging for him is for him to understand that he is tall and athletic and that he can dunk at the rim. He's got a lot of finesse to his game when he gets to the rim. He likes to lay the ball up and kind of shoot floaters and things like that. When there's a lot of times you could go back and see in some of his highlights, he's dunking the ball with veracity, and it's like, do that more often, right? Like to take it to the rim and look to shoot more often as opposed to looking to make that next pass and looking to float and layups and things. He's 6'8" and athletic as hell. Like, go in there and finish. Obviously, the jump shot is the last to come. That wasn't what he came out of the G League doing. But he has worked with Fred Vinson, who has since left and gone to Detroit to follow Trajan Langdon as the GM there from the Pelicans. And so his shot has come along. Like, he's not as bad as he was when he first came in, but he definitely has a lot to go. I think a lot of catch and shoot opportunities next to Trae Young and Jalen Johnson and guys like that. I think that's going to work out well for him. It's going to cause him to kind of have to get those reps in order to stay on the floor. But again, he is a really, really interesting prospect coming. Like, again, he's very young, so he has time to grow with your new young core. And I think that this is an ideal position for him because he's going to go in there and get that opportunity, and he's only going to get better. But he is already a defensive ace. And you're going to love when people are dribbling. You're no longer going to have that problem of can people just turn the corner and get past your two guard or your point guard, whatever he's doing at that point in time, over and over again. He is not having that. He goes for blocks. He goes for steals. So he's a defensive impact guy, and he's somebody who wants to be better. He talks about wanting to be a defensive playmaker like Herb. He was a good defender, but he wants to get into steals and blocks. He's a guy that wants to get better. He's very mature beyond his years. So you got a really good player in the side. I think somebody who's got a lot of upside to go with that young core that you guys have now.
Yeah, and guys, I was, when the trade happened, I was. At first, they actually only reported Larry Nance, which I was like, "Ain't no way we just traded him for 2 picks." Listen. I
can see how that might be. That might have not gone well.
Yeah, exactly. Because the first report was just that, so I was like, "Are we serious?" But then they said, "Okay, Dyson Daniels was added," and I was like, "All right, now this makes it a little bit better." But I'm excited for him, man. I think that again, yes. Are you losing a guy who can get you 20, 30? Yes, true, right? But I feel like under Atlanta, especially with Quinn Snyder and Trae Young, we can still have a good offense. I don't think offense is going to be an issue. They just have to rework some things. And then Trae Young's one of the best playmakers in the game. So I think that he'll always create opportunities for other guys and help get people shots. The biggest thing, like I said, they needed to improve is that point of attack. Now, obviously, we don't know if he'll start yet. We're still in the beginning stages of the offseason for free agency and everything like that. But he will definitely be in the rotation to me. Hawks will probably be converting back to a 4-guard rotation. With Dejounte, the issue was that he was your de facto backup, so you only ran 3 last year. And so on and so forth. But, I mean, watching film on him, I see the defensive prowess. I see the activity. I see just – and obviously, he's like 6'7". So he's a big guy. Basically, he can probably play – would you guys say he's probably guard multiple positions, maybe 1 through 3 maybe?
Oh, yeah, he can go 1 through 4. Yeah, he can go 1 through 4. Okay.
Bryce, there was times when he was guarding Victor Wembanyama, he was guarding Chet Holmgren. Like, he was the de facto 5 because he's also strong. That's not something we talked about as well. Like, he's improved his body. So where some of the big matchups like the Luka Doncic's and the Kawhi Leonard's and things like that, Dyson was a better matchup than Herb because of his body type and his ability to play physical for sure.
Yeah, and I think I remember too, even I don't know what game. I think it was the playing game against the Lakers. It'd be like late in that game, though. I think Dyson came out. I think Willie has sent Dyson out there for defensive reasons. I think it was like late game situations, but I mean, that shows a lot of trust that he has in him to say, hey, we'll take so-and-so out and put Dyson Daniels in. So I think what Atlanta needs from that perspective, I think that would be big and huge for the team to be able to acquire that and just really help on the defensive side. Because like I said, the Hawks were one of the worst defensive teams in basketball last year. So I think that's a big deal for both sides. Now, you guys also gave up 2 picks, the Lakers pick for next year's draft, which is considered a deep draft. And then a couple years after that in 2027. Now, just to see how you guys feel, I mean, did that mean anything to you guys? Is it kind of like, we had to do what we had to do? Did you want to keep that Lakers pick? I mean, because you don't know what the Lakers are going to be next year. Like how did y'all feel about losing the draft capital?
Yeah, you got to spend money to make money. I've always been a fan of that slogan. And I think with the Lakers pick next year, I think that's pretty much what Atlanta's throwing down the gauntlet to say. They're shorting the Lakers, right? And I think listen, the Lakers pick can be whatever it could be, but they had a hell of a run this year with health. And they still barely, scratched the surface of the playoff. Had Zion not pulled his hamstring, who knows where the Lakers would have been, this season. And so, listen, are they going to – we've already, as we're talking now, they've already missed out on Klay Thompson. They've already missed out on a lot of the guys that Dejounte Murray, guys that they were looking to get better with. They just haven't. And so this pick can be really good next year when you talk about a Cooper Flag draft. And so I think that was them going into them shorting the Lakers and saying, hey, listen, that's a really good pick moving forward. I get that you had to give up something to get something, so it's perfectly fine. But also, as my brother can very much co-sign on, Willie Green doesn't really play young players anyway. And so, it's like we've sat and watched Jordan Hawkins ride the bench and go to the G League. It took Trey Murphy 2 years to really get on the floor, contributing and so on and so forth. And with so many guys, we were just talking about it before we got on here with the lineup, with the roster and the pieces that you're going to have, it's going to be very hard to even find somebody to plug in there, get those minutes. It's going to be very hard to get those minutes in there. So I think the picks are fine. Listen, you had to give up something in order to get a guy like Dejounte. This is just not like a run-of-the-mill guard. Like, this is a young, all-star capable guy on a really good contract. You're going to have to pay some. If it meant that you got to keep Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, give the picks up and get it over with and get that all-star caliber player into your lineup.
Yeah. If you look at what David Griff's been saying over the last couple of years and his version of being aggressive, the Pelicans acquired all those picks from the Bucks trade of the past with Drew Holiday and the Anthony Davis trade with the Lakers. And so the currency that the Pelicans want to operate with is draft picks, right? And so you knew that those were going to be the ones. So on top of the fact that, Willie Green has a propensity not to play young players, also, if you look at the core of what's left on this roster, and again, who knows with Brandon Ingram, the only player that's 30-plus is C.J. McCollum. So for the next foreseeable future, those guys in your top 6, top 7, top 8 are all 23, 24, 25, 26. So any of those draft picks that you have in the next couple of years, it's going to be hard for them to crack the rotation at all. And so to me, I think that this is a trade that's a win-win for both sides, both giving Atlanta some runway in the future while also giving them a developmental project in Dyson that can address the need right now and that can help them compete.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is just what trade works for both ends. I think sometimes when people get into trades, we have all these ideas of how can we fleece the other team? You know, it's always like how can we finesse them for a player and then not give up a lot back.
The same way Steph Curry broke basketball, Danny Ainge broke trade discussions.
Yeah, exactly, man. So like it's been interesting, but I do want to ask this though. Obviously, I remember before the trade leading up, I remember seeing Pelicans pods and Pelicans stuff pop up on my timeline. And I was like, it felt like y'all were debating Trae Young and Dejounte Murray. That's what I saw. It felt like y'all were debating, well, which one would you want? Which one would you rather have? So let me ask you guys, before that trade, I'm assuming you guys discussed that. Was there a preference between the two of them in terms of who you wanted on the Pelicans?
I'm going to let Raph start because I think we have a difference here as well. So go ahead and start, Raph.
Yeah. Me personally, and me just seeing the way that the team is created right now and the coach that the team has right now, I never thought Trae Young made a whole lot of sense. Because if you're looking at what Trae does the best is when Trae has the ball and he's able, to your point, he's one of the best passers in the game to facilitate for other people. Well, you're also stumbled upon this thing called Point Zion, where if you spread the floor and you put shooters around him, that's kind of what you love to see. Like he was scoring at a ridiculous rate per possession. And so if you're telling me you got to trade all these assets to acquire Trae Young, who's a defensive liability, but then also not put him in the position that makes him the best, making him play more off ball than on ball, that's a lot to be given up in a situation where I don't even know if that's the best position for Trae. And so for me, again, we talked about it, we opened this episode. Willie Green's a guy who leans on defense first. I never thought that Trae Young was really in the plans for this team. And for me personally, again, I'm watching the Celtics, the people who just won. They had no liabilities on the defensive end. They had no liabilities on the offensive end. And again, with Trae, you are increasing your offense by a lot, but you're also taking away a lot on defense as well. And so for me, I always thought, I sent my brother a text of my wish list of the offseason, and Dejounte Murray was the name and not Trae Young for me. But I know my brother has a different opinion, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, I listen, my opinion is based, and I'm gonna end this with a question to you as well, Bryce, because this kind of comes into what we want to know about Dejounte coming into the Pelicans. So my philosophy on this has always been centered around Brandon Ingram. I always thought that if you traded Brandon Ingram for Dejounte Murray, that is a lateral move for the Pelicans, who are in a situation where they're trying to win, right? With Zion there, with Trae and Herb, with a lot of money being spent around these guys. I always thought that trading Brandon Ingram for Dejounte would be a lateral move for the Pelicans. So if a trade with Brandon Ingram was involved, that's when I said I would want Trae Young to be the target. And the reason I would want that is because that is the step up that you take as far as talent level, right? Like that is the step up that you take when you're talking about Brandon Ingram. I've always held on to the fact that if you're going to trade for Brandon Ingram, and this was before Dejounte got on the team, but if you're going to trade Brandon Ingram, I want to be attaching a pick or two to Brandon Ingram because the person that you're getting is so much better than he is. And I think as the defensive side of the ball would have been an issue, it would have been something to look that you had to address. But in that same light as the Celtics in the finals, I look at Dallas with Kyrie and Luka on the floor, who were terrible defensively. Obviously, they both played a lot better in things. But when you put Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively out there, as well as with PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr., they were able to do some things to hide defensively and able to get through some things. And offensively, Luka and Kyrie at one point were being considered one of the best offensive backcourts in history. And so that's what I was looking for in the offensive side with Trae Young, his passing ability to unlock Zion, his ability to stretch the floor in a way where if you double Trae, you got to kind of watch two people will have to watch Trae's pick and roll game. But like Zion is also down there, so you have to worry about him as well. I just think that would have been interesting to see if Brandon Ingram was involved in the trade. But because Brandon Ingram was not involved in the trade, I much rather prefer the Dejounte Murray fit on the team with this offensive defensive side. Now, the question I have for you, Bryce, as we kind of talk about the player coming to the Pelicans, is that what was Dejounte like playing off ball? Like what did that look? Because as much as he's going to be on the ball in New Orleans and asked to relegate the offense to do things, you also have to know that like Zion is there with the ball in his hand. And if in the event that Brandon Ingram stays, either he has now signed a max contract and is going to want the ball, or he's not going to sign and he's going to want the ball in order to show other teams who might be looking to trade for him at the trade deadline. He's going to want the ball as well. So either way it goes, Dejounte is not going to be a 90% on the ball type of guy. So what was he like off the ball, and how did some of that offense look, and what was his temperament at playing off the ball?
I think, obviously it was an adjustment for him. I mean, he's a natural point guard by trade. So, playing off the ball in more of a two role when Trae was on the floor was different. I mean, obviously they're both points. So they kind of sometimes ran a it's your turn, my turn type of style. But in terms of it, I mean, the biggest thing he had to improve was his shooting because of that. If he became a better spot-up shooter, obviously with Trae's playmaking ability, he was able to be a guy who he's hit clutch shots just based off the fact he was able to get into corners, get the top of the key and hit big shots. So it's something that he could definitely do, and I think it's something that he's improved doing. I mean, people forget that he had a career high in points this year, even you know what I'm saying. So he showed he can still be effective. So I think for him, within the scheme of your team, I think it'll work out for him playing off ball. I mean, obviously, because I think at the end of the day, it's one thing, like you said, if Zion's playing, point forward and taking the ball off the floor. Because, I mean, you can move Dejounte. He came from, people forget, he came from a Spurs system. So that was all predicated about ball movement, just movement in general on the court. So I think that is something that helps him. Now, the big thing for Dejounte is he has to get himself into a rhythm, though. So one of the issues that you can maybe say he had at times, maybe he felt like he wasn't getting into a rhythm because of that, because I feel like the way he plays, he is a bit of a kind of like a throwback a little bit in the way he plays in terms of his offense. It's like he kind of, especially with that mid range, it's something he's just a sweet spot. So obviously, spacing will be important so he can get into that spot. Obviously, he's a good driver. He sometimes at times he'll just be aggressive and drive to the lane, things like that. And I think you can take advantage of that cuts to the lane. So he's someone, like I said, can go downhill, get open, and he's a good finisher around the basket. So I think that those are some key things that will help him on and off ball. And it'd just be interesting to see maybe how Willie Green sees him in the grand scheme of things. Because like I said, I guess one of the big questions would be like, it's a clutch situation. Do you go with Zion bringing it up? Or do you have Dejounte kind of bring it up and kind of let him create? Because he's not obviously the playmaker Trae is, but he can still play. Like he can still assist. He's just it's just different. So I think that's going to be the big thing. Because I think in those off-ball situations, you brought him in to help in clutch situations. So, if you're going to play him off ball, I'm assuming you may have more plays designed to get him involved. Maybe if that is coming off a screen or et cetera. Because I think like I said, he's proved spot-up shooting. I didn't see when he had the ball, he came off screens and shot pretty well. I don't know about from just a straight on ball perspective, but it worked at times. Because sometimes maybe you'll be especially because Zion's going to get the attention, he could take advantage of one-on-one matchups. So maybe he could take advantage of, okay, they're double teaming, Dejounte get open, he'll be able to make a play from there. So it's kind of he's made strides in that area, playing off ball, and I think he'll be able to do that in New Orleans. It'll just be interesting, the dynamics. I think it'll be different if Brandon Ingram stays and then instead if he goes, So it just kind of depends really in that situation. But big thing is just making sure that he can get into a rhythm offensively, because Dejounte can have nights where he'll be 5 of 21. Because he took 21 shots. That's just because he's trying to get himself where he needs to be. So I think it's just going to be And I don't know if it's going to be that situation of like, oh, is there enough basketball to go around to the guys, especially if you keep Ingram. But for him, I think that'll be big. But he's very disruptive as well. So defensively too, I think he was one of the top guys in steals. So
yeah,
I mean,
he was one, and Herb was two, and then our teammates.
Exactly. So I think that actually will be interesting to see how he is in that role, and just what do you guys want from him in that role? Because I guess that'd be a good question for you guys. It's like, what from what you see with the fit right now? Let's say Ingram stays. What do you want from DJ for you guys?
You go ahead, Ref.
So for this, again, I started the pod saying like this is a perfect fit. And I think it is. Now, I do think there's going to have to be some discussions in terms of the roles and expectations that everyone can play. Because I think if you keep the roster as is with those four main pillars, in Dejounte and B.I. and Zion, Herb, Trae, things like that, obviously there's not enough shots for everybody to shoot 25 times a game, right? In that scenario. But well, I think that
you didn't even mention CJ McCollum. So
he's shooting the ball. You don't have to question that. But what I think, again, where you may have close to the same output in terms of stats. Now, maybe you don't hit 20 points per game, 22 points per game, things like that, but you're at 17, 18, 16. I think your efficiency will go up because you talked about Zion getting double. Zion gets triple, quadruple. Like and honestly, when you're watching the game, if you don't send 3, 4, 5 guys, you look dumb, right? And so in those scenarios, I think Dejounte is the perfect type of player that one can catch and shoot. I saw he shot near 40% on catch and shoot opportunities last year. But two, to your point, if you're putting the worst defender on the court on him, I'm gonna give Dejounte the opportunity to cook. Because yes, we talk about B.I. needing the ball and Zion need the ball. But there was also time throughout the season and the finished games where those guys were unselfish to a fault. Like they were passing the ball too much and giving up the ball too much. And I think with someone like Dejounte, he's going to be able to feel the game out and be like, B.I., you got it going. Keep going. Zion, you just hit 4 in a row. Keep going. I'm cooking. And the players that are around them on the team right now are okay with that and probably support that to some degree. And so in terms of his role, again, if you watch the Pelicans, health is always the number one thing with this team. There are going to be opportunities for him to run the show throughout the course of the season. There just will be. People will not be available all throughout the year. There's going to be opportunities him in crunch time to be the closer, to be the organizer, to facilitate for other people. There's going to be opportunities to do both when you mix and match, similar to the Celtics, where you've always got some type of gravitational pull on the court, and then you've got Dejounte. So his role is still easier. So not only is he not being asked to be the best defender on the court because of Herb Jones, you're not even asking him to be the best offensive player on the court because you probably got somebody else on there with him as well. And so really fitting into that super sub or that super role player, I think would be a great fit for Dejounte. And I think it's really going to have to bolster the Pelicans team because if you look at the West, it's an arms race. Like OKC was just the number one team in the West, and they went and spent a bunch of money on Hartenstein and made a trade for Caruso. The Mavs just went to the finals. They just acquired Klay Thompson. And like people are adding talent, not subtracting it, and going to figure out after that. I think that's where the Pelicans are with that and Dejounte.
Yeah, I can't wait for Dejounte to get his dance partner in Zion. I want those two to get into some kind of rhythm, some kind of tandem where they become a devastated pick and roll tandem. We've been begging. There's been a lot of times throughout the tenure of Brandon Ingram and Zion where we've been begging those guys to get into actions together. And I think part of the reason it's kind of difficult to get those two guys into action is because you can kind of guard them with like bodies, right? Zion is explosive, but he's not like fast, like with the ball, like fast getting like that kind of situation. And Brandon Ingram is another mid-range guy, doesn't really like to shoot the threes. Like he can, but he doesn't really like them. So you can kind of play them separately. Well, if you get Dejounte out there, a guy who's aggressive from the three-point line, a guy who's aggressive getting downhill, a guy who's aggressive getting to the rim, I think that it's a lot easier to pair those two guys with pick and roll situations where you could take advantage of some if you switch, there are some opportunities there where Zion can punish a smaller defender. Like you said, if that worst defender is guarding Dejounte, getting him in a pick and roll with Zion should be where he and Zion should be a dream, should be a go-to play. You talk about who brings the ball up in close situations. You watch it with Jokic and Jamal Murray. It's not who brings the ball up. They know what's the bread and butter to go to. Like they know we'll run a pick and roll, and whoever gets the shot off of that, they'll get the shot. Sometimes it's Jokic, sometimes it's Murray. I like to see a little bit of that with Dejounte Murray and Zion. And then also just to keep that offense afloat during times where even with as many offensive weapons as you would seem like the Pelicans would have with Zion, with Brandon Ingram, with CJ, with Trey Murphy, there were just a lot of times last season where the offense got stagnant. A lot of people were dribbling and looking around and waiting for other people to do things. I think Dejounte is more of a proactive offensive player, like kind of what my brother was saying. A lot of standing around waiting for, what's Zion going to do? What Brandon Ingram going to do? What CJ's going to do? He's more of a, not to hell with you guys, I'm going. And I think that there needs to be a little bit of that north-south playing from the guard position that the Pelicans have been missing. And obviously setting the team up, getting guys in situations in late game offense will be something that Dejounte is good at, picking whether to attack or make that pass. I think that he, with more talent, he'll start with more talent around, like more superstar high-end talent around. I think that'll be something that he'll buy into and kind of try to use that talent. So I'm looking for just Dejounte to be Dejounte, like just come in, score, be aggressive, and get into those pick and roll tandems with Zion. I think that he'll be a tremendous kind of asset to the offense. And then obviously the defense side is something that he'll be able to contribute as well.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah. And I got a question for you, too, to kind of piggyback off that. Again, the best season for Brandon Ingram happened when Lonzo Ball and Drew Holiday, not traditional point guards, were there facilitating and feeding him catch and shoot shots. My question to you, I've heard some stuff from some rumblings about Dejounte being a ball stopper at times and kind of over dribbling at times. Do you think he will, playing with more talent and playing with a team that's competing to go for it, how do you think he will adjust in this scenario? Do you think he's okay playing maybe a less on-ball role or not getting up as many shots? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think the thing is, yes, there were times with the ball stop. I think the big game, you guys want to look back, there was a game, in Portland. He scored 40 that game. But if you watch the game, it felt like there was a lot of ball stopping. He kind of was like dribbling the air out of the ball. I mean, you could kind of chalk it up to Portland because they kind of did okay, well, we'll just let him cook and let him take shots and just defend everybody else, right? The thing with him, and this is what I mentioned about earlier about him getting into a rhythm, is that, he'll sometimes be hunting for shots. Because sometimes I would say when he played with the Hawks last year, there were times where he wouldn't take shots, and then he'll just take like 8 in the next like 4 minutes because he's just trying to okay, let me get going, let me do something, right? So I think it just depends. Like, and then also I have to look at the situation when Trae was out and we had injuries, especially when Jalen Johnson was also out. He was he knew he was like the main offensive option. So like, yeah, I mean, it's you still want to play team basketball, of course, but there was a good ball movement when it was happening. But there were times where DJ would just all right, let me break down my defender, take whatever, try to get a good look. So it kind of just varies in the situation in the game. So I think that's going to be one of the more interesting things to see that transition with the Pelicans is about how does that go? Because obviously he really, if y'all guys are healthy, he won't have to do that, And like I said, he's had to learn, like you said, to play a little more off ball and be a spot-up shooter and things of that nature. So I think that's going to be what's interesting about it. Now, I can't sit here and tell you he won't have a moment with you guys where he'll just kind of just shot. I mean, especially if he's making some, he's just about to, he's feeling it. All right, I'm about to start taking it. Or maybe there's a game where, maybe Zion isn't playing well, not shooting the ball well. Ingram ain't shooting the ball well, CJ. And then he may be like, all right, let me kind of take control here and see what we can do. So it kind of can vary. And I think that just goes into why, like some people say, obviously he's not a better playmaker than Trae, because Trae pretty much in any situation can find a guy. Where Dejounte sometimes can maybe get that tunnel vision and say, okay, time for me to score. Because he's very big, like, I want my teammates to do what they need to do because obviously that's going to be best for the overall product and then for the team. But there are times where it's like, all right, let me try to do my thing. Like, I mean, we there was always that joke, and when he played teams that maybe he was connected to trading wise, then he'll start to show out a little bit. Just take a few more shots and everything like that. So it kind of varies a little bit with that. Like I said, in New Orleans, I don't know if he'll be able to do that as much in terms of ball stopping, because like I said, he can, which if during that stretch he can run on offense where the ball is moving, the ball is swinging. It just kind of depends on, I think, the flow of the game, what's going on, and where is he at in the process. So because like I said, the biggest thing for him is just like what his role within the team, and then it's like, all right, what are we doing? How can I impact the team? How can I be effective? What do I need to do? Because I think that's always the thing when you always add another high volume guy. It's just okay, so when do I become aggressive? When do I just kind of, because people say they hate ISO, but at the end of the day, if you need a bucket, you kind of go ISO. Like, I mean, like when Dallas needs a bucket, they're not saying, hey, let's ball movement till it gets to Luke. It's like, all right, just take it and go. So like, it's and then you just hope that he has the playmaking ability to see the floor. So if someone does get open, he can see that. And so I think that would be like the kind of the same thing for DJ in that situation. It's just, is he going to be passive at times? Because like I said, he's coming into a situation. He's not the first option. He knows that. I'm sure he understands that. And so, how is that going to play where it's like, if you get into those clutch situations, and I think that's an adjustment that every, team has to make. It's like, okay, when y'all start getting into those clutch situations in New Orleans, okay, do we feed Zion here? Do we feed DJ here? What do we do? I mean, if CJ's still on the team, which I know maybe Pelicans fans would hate, CJ's still on the team. They're like, does DJ get a shot? So I think that would be an interesting, just an interesting thing to see with the Pelicans, to see how that ends up developing and so on and so forth. But now I kind of have a question, because I know you guys just lost Valanciunas, right? Just lost him. And I know people are like, all right, so what is New Orleans doing at center? Can I interest you in Clint Capella? The trade's not completed until July 6th. Just saying. Can I interest you in acquiring contract and Clint Capella?
I think one of the reasons why this trade took so long to make is because I don't think Clint Capella is the center that the Pelicans are interested in. I think, listen, you just come off my brother can attest to this. We've been screaming for rim protection with the Pelicans for seasons on seasons on seasons. It has been since the Steven Adams days that we were like, there's nobody behind those perimeter defenders to do anything. And so that's something that they've been asked for. And I think that's what they're looking for in this offseason. They've been looking, they drafted Yves Missi. They've been connected to Jared Allen. They've been connected to Nick Claxton, guys who are going, who are going to rim protect and things. And they're also younger. And I think that that's something that they are looking to do. They're looking, the grown-ups in the room, Larry Nance, who's now a part of the Hawks, who, listen, y'all got a great professional and a great guy in Larry Nance, who I think got a bad shake in New Orleans as far as like what his role was intended to be. I think that they asked him to be something that he wasn't, he never could be. And as he got older, it just got even harder for him to be that. But you guys did get a great professional, great community guy, man. He came into New Orleans and changed the community in a lot of different ways. So you guys are going to love that about Larry Nance. He's good, take care of the game recaps that he posts on Twitter and rev in them, because you don't get them very long, obviously. But back to the Pelicans, I think they are looking to get a younger center. They've seen the light now as far as rim protection is going. JV obviously wasn't the rim protector, and neither was Larry Nance to a point. And so now I don't think that Clint Capella, I think that you're going to have to look a little different or somewhere else to do a little business with Clint Capella. But hey, I also didn't expect the Pelicans to get Dejounte Murray without giving up Brandon Ingram. So I won't be in, I don't see how, I won't put anything past the trade expanding or anything like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't think Clint is in the cards. I think you just drafted Clint and Yves Missi. So a younger version. I don't see it.
Nah, I get it. I just had to ask. I know the need for a center, so I'm just saying because I know in the original trade rumors it was like the name was a Kongu. That was the one that was seeming like they want a Kongwu. Like they said, that was the holdup between the team. Well, we want a Kongwu. We want Herb. And so it's like, we don't kind of want to give up our young pieces. I don't want to give up our young pieces here. And so then it's like, well, what if we, what if we give you Val? We give you Clint? Well, I don't know about that, Chief. That's just how discussions go. It's just like, I don't know. So, but yeah, I just wanted to see about that. But is there anything you guys could tell me about the guy who's about EJ Liddell? He was thrown into the name like kind of later after the fact. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, they're adding him. Oh, okay, cool. I guess we're getting another guy. And I think they said he'll be on the summer league team. I think. I don't know how much he's played in Pelicans. I kind of saw some comments. They just said that they think there is something there. He just hasn't had playing time. And so I didn't know what were you guys' thoughts on him.
Yeah. So first off, you're interested to see him. So are we, because we went through the entire season, and this man, no matter what he did, he was not getting on they were interested in throwing JRE out there at the 5, Jeremiah Robinson Earl out there at the 5 for giving this man an opportunity. So again, in all seriousness, EJ Liddell was somebody that the team scouted for a long time. To be honest with you, I think that he was looked to be Larry Nance's replacement. Like they're both tweeners. Like the best comparison I could put is like a 2024 version of like Paul Millsap, where they're not really the 5, they're not really a wing, but they're somewhere in the middle. That's kind of where EJ Liddell is. Like he spread the floor coming out of college at Ohio State, shot like close to 40% from 3. But he's not like this huge jumper, and he's only like 6'7", so like he's kind of a tweener. It's an interesting place to put him. Again, like he hurt himself in his first year, his rookie year with the Pelicans, so you really didn't get to see him. As most people know, when you tear your ACL, it takes really like a year and a half to get back to where you were supposed to be. He had some decent games in the G League this year, but nothing that was like, oh, you got to play him right away. So to be honest with you, I have no idea what the Hawks are getting in EJ Liddell. Could be somebody that could fight for rotation minutes, energy minutes here and there. I don't see him being like a starter at any point for an NBA team or anything like that, but I'm not sure. So who knows from that end? I don't know, Garrick, did you see some hidden tapes or some old footage? Because we didn't see
there was no Zabruta film for EJ Liddell. What you saw is what you get. I would say that he is a slightly above athletic Boris Diaw is the kind of player that you're looking at. He does have some rim protection. He was like really one of the like best shot blockers in college his final year at Ohio State. So he does have some defensive prowess. I just don't know what is going to take for him to get on the floor. There's obviously something that the Pelicans were not seeing that didn't allow him to get an opportunity to play. He had, like my brother said, he had some good games in the G League, but I don't think he's somebody that will be, with the young core that you guys have, depending on what you guys do with Trae. I don't know if it's a full rebuild or if it's like, you're just going to kind of retool around Trae. I think if it's a full rebuild and you give him an opportunity, maybe he can find like a niche and you can see some things. But if it's a retooling situation around Trae Young, I don't think you're going to get very much out of EJ Liddell.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people are still waiting. Some people think, oh, they're still going to trade Trae. And I'm like, I don't think so at this point, but I mean, they could shock me. I don't know, but I mean, because I know for with everything, obviously you guys still have moves to make. Obviously, Brandon Ingram, still wondering about that. CJ still wondering about that, and obviously we still have moves to make. Are we going to move Hunter? Are we going to move Clint? Or are we going to move anybody else? Some people wonder, is Bogey going to become available for some teams? I know he's very valuable just for his 3-point shooting. So it sounds like really from both sides, it's like this was just like really the first step of the process, but it felt like a trade that, okay, we can help each other out. You need another scorer, especially at that guard spot. And, we needed to get a better point of attack guy in Dyson and, getting a professional Larry Nance. And, some people wonder, is Larry going to actually be here? Is this just an asset to maybe move again? Well, we don't know. I mean, so we'll have to see about that. But so I guess overall, guys, with the team, now that you've had DJ, do you, just since it's still early, do you see you guys, just if the roster stayed the same today, going further than last year with this addition of DJ? Do you think that DJ has elevated you guys? Because I know, like I said, Jose has been great, but obviously he's limited offensively, but you know he gives you defensively. And now you have the guard who can get you that big, 30, 40-point game if you need it. Like, so do you guys feel like, hey, now we got him, I think maybe we can compete with Mavericks, we can compete with Denver, we can compete with Minnesota. Is that where you guys are feeling?
To be honest with you, the Pelicans are not competing with any of those guys. They're competing with health. And if the Pelicans can beat the NBA champion health, the injury guys, then yes, I think they listen. The team is built for the modern NBA, right? Like you have switchable guys, you have shooting in Trae and Jordan Hawkins and Dejounte and CJ. Like you have shooting. You have defenders, hellacious defenders in Herb Jones and now Dejounte, like people who can attack defensively. You're obviously missing that rim protecting big, but I think that's something that they are going to address. And if not, they have Yves Missi, a guy who is projected, who can come in and kind of do that. So you have a team that is built for today's NBA, up and down the floor. You have that superstar talent. You have the B option, the C option, the D. It's all pretty if you look at it. It's just, can this team get it together? And now, which will be another year of them not having the same lineup and not being able to build a consistency among the players, right? They started to get a little bit of that last year when CJ, Zion, and BI had this run of health, which we kept saying just every day they would announce the lineups, knock on wood, knock on wood, knock on wood, and then it all came apart towards the end. But if this team can stay healthy, listen, they were climbing up the rankings. They were threatening to host a playoff series in that 4th seed before the injuries before the Zion injury. You got to remember last year, CJ had a collapsed lung. Brandon Ingram missed some time. Zion missed a whole bunch of time. Obviously, towards the end, missed the most important games. And so, if this team is together and they can get it together with this short amount of time, meaning training camp, the summer, and then getting obviously during the regular season, I think this team is as dangerous as any team in the West, especially with it being so wide open now. With KCP leaving the Hawks and the Mavericks kind of beating the Timberwolves, but like it could have went either way. Like it's a wide open, and obviously OKC is still young and getting some experience. The Pelicans have all the talent to go in there and fight for home court. And I think adding Dejounte to an already kind of really good and hard to guard Pelicans offense, if it's clicking the right way that you think it's supposed to, I think they have the team. All eyes are going to be on the head coach this year, Willie Green, getting this together, getting this team together, finding the best way to utilize all of these toys that we call it, all these toys in his chest that he has. You have to find a way to utilize it. There was no Jordan Hawkins last season. There was very little Jordan Hawkins last season. Matt Ryan came into the Pelicans lineup and shot over 40% in like every game that he played, and then didn't play anymore for some reason. Like even when you needed shooting, these guys weren't there. So Dejounte coming in, I think it definitely benefits and helps the Pelicans, but it also helps look at and puts the onus on the coach and Willie Green to get this together and get this right, because you have the talent there, and they should be able to compete night in and night out with any team in the NBA.
Yeah, I would say my answer is incomplete, because as of right now, they don't have a starting center.
Yes.
Now, I expect that to change in the next couple of days, couple of weeks or whatnot. But to my brother's point, listen, there was 3 teams in the NBA that was top 10 in offense and defense. OKC, that was a 1 seed. Boston, that was a 1 seed, and the Pelicans. And that's with a starting lineup that had a net rating of negative throughout the season. So you're replacing a CJ in the starting lineup, hopefully, and becoming more athletic. You're hopefully getting a more athletic. I think it's almost impossible to not get a more athletic player than Jonas Valanciunas. And so, to my brother's point, now Willie Green gets to play the way he wants to play. He wants to play fast. He wants to play aggressive on defense. He wants to make it so that this is and it should be a up-tempo, fast team that turns defense into offense, right? Like, there should be no better show than Zion on a fast break. But with CJ sometimes, and definitely with JV, you weren't always conducive to that. Sometimes the ball slowed down when it had no business slowing down. And with a player like Dejounte, who excels in the open court, that can capitalize on Zion and hopefully an athletic 5. If you put that to this team, if those are the bookend pieces that you change while getting more minutes for Jordan Hawkins, while Trey Murphy doesn't, hopefully, knock on wood, start off missing the first 20 games of the season. Like, if you can get that going, I think this team, the sky is the limit. The other part that my brother didn't hone on enough, right around, again, the in-season tournament, when things went awry for the Pelicans, everybody saw it in Vegas versus the Lakers, the switch flipped for Zion Williamson. Ever since that moment, like his body looks different. His body language looked different. He was held to pay on the defensive end. He was creating offensive chances through his defense, but also getting more easy. He was beating everyone off the court, so getting more easy buckets and things like that. With that player, with that guy, if he goes into next season like that, the Pelicans are a totally different team. Because the first part of this season was a lot of figuring it out. Zion wasn't in shape. Let's just call a spade a spade. He wasn't in shape, so it was like Brandon Ingram, take us there. Trey Murphy wasn't available, so it was like Brandon Ingram, CJ, take us there. If Zion can start the season the way he finished it, outside of the injury, with the Dejounte, with centers that make sense, that he can capitalize on, that will actually catch a lob pass because they're athletic enough to jump that high and dunk, like that is going to take this team overboard. And again, I think that they can be just as good on offense as defense, and there's a lot of teams in the NBA that can say that. So I do think a Dejounte Murray is a key starting piece. Now address that starting center, and let's see what the Pelicans got.
Yeah, I mean, listen, both teams, man, got some interesting things going on. Now all of a sudden makes a New Orleans Atlanta final very interesting, if that ever happens. Very, very interesting. I already can see the storylines now. DJ versus Trae. Who won? Who should they have kept? Things of that nature. So
maybe we can stoke the fires of New Orleans versus Atlanta in basketball the way it is.
That'd be crazy.
Maybe
y'all twice a year. Like, why are we here like this? It's funny because when we play you guys, we usually play pretty well against you guys usually. So I mean, it just worked out. I mean, I know we were ecstatic after last preseason when we were just having a field day at Georgia Tech's arena, just layups and lobs everywhere. And it's just like, yeah, we're not taking it seriously at all. We're just playing basketball. So, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens for both teams, man. I'm excited to see, like I said, I hope Dejounte is very successful in New Orleans. I hope he works out for you guys, but I'm also excited for Dyson coming to Atlanta, help with our point of attack defense. We will see if Larry has a role. If he does, hopefully he can contribute, good veteran experience. And then, like I said, we have some picks now we can play with. The Hawks want to make another big move potentially this offseason.
Yeah, even if you keep the Lakers pick, you got a reason to root against the Lakers now. So I mean, that's always
exactly.
That's always
There's no reason to help the Lakers. There's no reason to help the Lakers, man. But I appreciate you both coming on to the show. Let people know where they can find you in the pod.
Go ahead, bro.
NewOrleans.basketball. So again, follow myself, Raphael_Rattler. Follow my brother, Garrick_Rattler. But NewOrleans.basketball on YouTube, on any Buzzsprout, anywhere where you listen to podcasts. That's where you can check us, and we'll always be covering the Pelicans.
Sir, I appreciate you guys once again. And obviously, guys, y'all know where to find me, Bryce_2K on Twitter. Believe on Hawks, available across any podcast platform out there. This is your Believe in Hawks podcast. We'll see you next time.